I am joined by UFC veteran, MMA pioneer, analyst, coach, and just all around one of the brilliant minds of combat sports, Mr. Dean Thomas. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm talking to Dean Thomas. I don't think it gets much better than that.
Oh, well,
Uh,
thank you very much.
yeah, man, you are an OG of the sport, and you came in like it was right after the time when Zuffa had purchased the UFC and Dana White was president. Um, so when you look at the UFC nowadays, what would you say is the most glaring difference from when you competed?
It's hard to say, you know why? Because for me, it's still the same sport, right? Like when I got involved in 1995, and it was all about learning how to defend yourself, how to fight, and just like and competition, right? That's what it was. It was testing yourself against another human being. So, like at the end of the day, my core soul still believes in that.
Mm-hmm.
And but the sport has outgrown that. Or I don't even want to say outgrown. I want to say it has taken another path. And so the priority of the sport has taken a completely different path. But for me, it's still what it always was. But when I look at that path that the UFC has taken and MMA has taken, I'm impressed. I'm proud. Sometimes I'm disgusted.
Sure,
But at
sure.
the end of the day, it's provided me a living and a career and a lifestyle, and I would have it no other way because I can't do anything else. Since I was 18 years old, I've dedicated my life to the sport of what we know now as MMA, and I can't do anything else. And I'm just so thankful that there are opportunities for me to still be in it.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC brings you in as an on-air talent frequently. How did that even get to be? Did you approach them or did they hit you up and was like, Dean, we need a mind out here, you know?
Oh, I mean, it's crazy because like my life has just really like pieces to a puzzle. Like I had been like working on different things, and when I needed a certain skill set, I kind of already had it because I had been working on things along the way. And that's being in front of a camera, interviewing and talking and speak. So I had all those things kind of in my back pocket, and that's kind of what got me the job on looking for a fight. So and that's how it all started. When when the gentleman before me got kicked off the show or left the show, I'll say, I don't want to throw any rumors out there. When he left the show, they needed somebody right away. And Matt Sarah said, "What about Dean Thomas?" And Dana called me and I was on the show, and that just opened up so many doors for me, just another world of opportunities just by taking that advantage of that one opportunity and being prepared. Took advantage of that. And then we were in Abu Dhabi, and I was right by them riding bikes with the vice president of production. And I didn't know he was the vice president of production. We just chopped it up every day riding bikes, talking about fights. And he was like, "Man, you would be great on the desk. You ever thought about that?" And I was like, "Nah, I never really thought about that." He was like, "Well, you should give it a shot. I'm gonna have some people get in touch with you." Next thing I know, I'm on the desk. Next thing I know, I get a contract. Next thing I know, I'm like, man, next thing I know, I got my own show on ESPN after Tough, so it's just one thing leads to another just by taking advantage of that opportunity that you never really knew was going to be the big one.
No, I love it. I think that's absolutely fantastic that there's even an avenue for veterans of the sport who've been there. They know what they're talking about to actually, yeah, share that knowledge with the world because there's a lot of us don't know what's going on, right? Like a lot
Well,
of us
yeah,
don't.
and that too, and I feel bad for a lot of other guys in the sport because it's such a new sport and it's such a underground, dirty. And this is one of the things that disgusts me. Like I said, it's such a it's such a new sport, and there's no real blueprint on how to be successful at this.
Mhm.
And when it's over, a lot of guys don't have a lot of opportunities, and they dedicate so much of their time and craft on their craft and not the end game.
Mhm.
And because they don't want to admit to themselves that eventually they're going to have to stop fighting. No one wants to admit that when they're in the middle of a fight career. Eventually, it's going to end. So they don't want to admit it, and they don't work on something to do afterwards. However, I was fortunate enough to not be that guy,
Right.
and I always knew that one day it would end. And it's probably because I got in when I got in. In the early 2000s, no one thought that you could make a career of this. So we were always like, all right, what am I going to do after this? What am I going to do after that? What am I going to do after this? And irresponsibly, I didn't go to college or anything. So I was doing like acting classes so I could be
Mm.
better, so I could be better on the mic,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I could get in front of a camera and talk. So I was doing that instead of like going to school to be a lawyer or something. So
Sure, sure.
by doing that, it parlayed into me being on TV, and everything just kind of worked out for me. Like I said, pieces to a puzzle
Mm-hmm.
created this picture.
I always like to say that I hate when people say that, you're lucky or whatever. That's like the worst. And I always tell them that luck is it's when preparation meets opportunity. So I can't co-sign on you saying that you got in at the right time. I think you just sacrificed a big part of your life and you dedicated it to this craft, to combat sports. And like you're saying, you were preparing yourself so when the opportunities did arise, you were ready for them, you
Yeah,
know?
that's exactly what it is. I stay prepared, man. I'm always ready. Like I keep a bag with all my stuff in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Like
bug out bag.
I'm always ready for any opportunity. If somebody got a good opportunity for me, call me because I'm always ready. When in fact, in doing this interview, when I was approached to do this interview, they made it like it was a big deal. I was like, dude, let's just do the interview. Like I'm always ready. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
prepared. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get this thing on. You never
Mm-hmm.
know. But it's because it's nothing's a big deal to me, and it drives me crazy sometimes when I'm dealing with fighters who are always looking for what are you going to give me right now?
Sure.
What
Sure.
are you going to like? Oh, can you do an interview? Well, what are you going to give me? What if,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, I'm just like, you don't get it.
They
You have
don't
a
get
hard
it.
time. You have a hard time making it in this game. You don't get it.
Yeah, and like even on the journalism side, I have plenty of fans who are like, "Oh man, how'd you get into journalism? Like, how do you get on? Like, what do you do?" And I just tell them like, you just do it, and you got to be willing to eat shit, and you have to be willing to do free work. Like that's what it boils down to. If you're not willing to do free work, like if you don't love what you're doing enough to do it for free, like you're not going to get anywhere. Or when people ask about sponsorships, I'm like, they're like, how do you get sponsorships? I'm like, well, you need to articulate how you can bring value to them. If you start out with me, 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 they're not getting through 3 sentences. You got to right away tell them what value you can provide them, or they don't have time for that. And like, there's a
It's funny when
disconnect.
you talk about that. And I tell that I'm always like, yo, sponsors aren't there to give you free money to help you achieve your dream. That's not what a sponsorship is.
Mm-hmm.
And fighters believe that. They believe that there's these companies out there that really want to see them do well in mixed martial arts and just want to give them a bunch of money. I go, that's not the way it works. I
Mm-mm.
go, sponsorships are a partnership where you're advertising for them. So you need to be out there. So when Bloody Elbow approaches you to do an interview, you need to get on that interview so that your name can be out there so that the companies that give you money can have some eyeballs on them as well. And
Mm-hmm.
people don't get it, man. They just think that sponsors want to see them train and fight in these small towns. Like they don't get it, man. I go, that's why you're never going to be successful because that that's the only blueprint really in this game, and that's taking care of other people along the way, right? I think that's
Mm-hmm.
because a
Mm-hmm.
lot besides that, there's no real blueprint on how to have success. But I think that's a blueprint in life, really. Is just
Yeah.
on your journey to what it is that you want to do, make sure you take care of some other people because that aligns you with that positivity that keeps you moving forward.
Yeah, and it takes a village. Anything I've ever done involved other people, and that usually involved me paying into that relationship way ahead of time. So when I did happen to ask for a favor, they were more than willing, like more than willing, because you lay the foundation. It's not just a gimme, gimme, gimme kind of thing. But let me ask you this: so you were around in like the good old sponsorship days where they had the tap out shorts with like a
Hmm.
gazillion logos on it, and I call it the glory days.
It
Uh,
was.
but like nowadays they got the Venom deal and all of that. Do you know like what percentage fighters get through the Venom deal versus what you were getting when you were fighting?
Well, it's an unfair comparison, really, because when we were getting what we were getting, the market was skewed. It was a time where that was a time where like the sport was kind of was starting to blow up, and people wanted to be. I'm sorry.
Oh
Hopefully that.
no, I can still hear you.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'll be all right. Here we go.
Hey.
I dropped my phone. Dropped. I'm terribly sorry. No, but that was a time where the sport was just starting to blow up, and no one really knew what it was. And again, there was no blueprint, so no one really knew what MMA fighters made, and they thought that we made a lot of money. So all these startup companies were investing a lot in the MMA, and they were giving guys a lot of money. I remember making almost 70 grand for one fight.
Whoa.
And yeah, I mean, we were making a lot of money in sponsors because you could go to different companies and be like, yeah, MMA, it's on pay-per-view. And so you got to give my guy $10,000 for this little patch on the shorts. And companies were like, all right, I'll do it. And that's why everybody was making a lot of money. And then after that, it kind of balanced out to where people realized that, wait a minute, there's no return of investment of our investment. And then a lot of MMA fighters were getting screwed over because these companies weren't paying them or they were
Mhm.
going out of business because they weren't legit or substantial enough to really pay that money. So when we talk about the glory days of the sponsorships, for a couple of years it was amazing. But then after that, when it balanced out, when they realized that, all right, wait a minute, what are we doing? Then it wasn't that amazing. So that's why I'm not completely upset with the Venom deal. Like I wish they could make more, but at least I know this. At least I know that that check clears. At
Right.
least we know
Yeah.
that. At least we know that that check clears because I remember times where a company would be like, "All right, here we're gonna give you $5,000 to wear this T-shirt." Then you're knocking on the door, nobody's answering the call, they're not calling you back, and you're not getting it back. So at least we know that the check clears with the Venom deal. It may not be what people think. I mean, it's kind of a democratic way of distributing the money, because some of the real good guys probably should get more, but the guys on the entry level are getting about what they deserve, and yeah, getting about what they deserve because they're probably not bringing that many eyeballs. But at the end of the day, um, I'm hoping it gets better. I'm assuming that as the sport grows, it's going to get better. But for now, at least the check is clearing.
Yeah, I guess you do have a point with that. Um, but it just seemed like when they had independent sponsors, when fighters had independent sponsors, um,
Yeah, the
the
potential, the
potential to
potential,
make more.
yeah. So when you talk about some of the higher profile fighters, yeah, they're screwed from that because like if you're
Yeah.
a high profile fighter and you could have made a lot of money with that sponsorship, you could have really cleaned up.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's a little bit more lenient than it was expected. I remember when they first started outfitting the fighters, they were like, all right, fight week, you're not allowed to wear anything else and you're
Hmm.
not allowed to do this. But now, I mean, they're very lenient with it. Like if you're a fighter, you can still have sponsorships. You can
Sure.
still freak sponsorships. You can still, I mean, we got social media now where
Right.
the visibility and exposure to helping your sponsors are so much more than a little patch on your shorts. So if you're freaking it right, you should still be getting good sponsorships. But
Right.
I just don't think a lot of fighters are freaking it to the best of their ability.
Do you remember when Sam Alvey he had that tanning sponsor and he like tanned words on himself?
Yes.
It, he said he got fined for that. He was
Did he
like
really?
25 grand.
Oh
So,
my God.
well, he said that it wasn't really a 25 grand fine, but he was going to get a performance bonus. But because of
Oh,
that, the UFC
they
was
didn't
like,
give him the
nah,
performance bonus.
yeah.
Oh,
Do
well, that
you see
sucks.
him? Do you see his Karate Combat debut at all?
No, how did it go for him?
Oh, it went really well. He got a first round knockout. It
Did
was
he
like
really?
classic Sam Alvey. Yeah.
Well, good
Classic
for him,
Sam.
man. I'm glad he found some place where he can win fights, man. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I we start getting concerned about these guys.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh,
Start to worry about these guys, and they're getting knocked out. And
the worst part of being an MMA fan is having to watch your heroes go out on their shield. That's for me. That's
oh,
like
it is
it's
no.
unavoidable, you know.
And again, no one tells them, and in their head, they think that all they got to do is they can train through it. They can train through the slump,
Mm-hmm.
but it's no training through the slump, man. It just that's not a slump. That's a downward spiral.
It's a trend. It's trending
Yeah.
downward for sure. So like back to the sponsorship talk. I know like back in the day you were sponsored by Revgear
Mm-hmm.
and they were the very first pair of shin guards and Muay Thai gloves I ever owned was Revgear. Like that's how long ago they've been around. And like they're still here. And I think that's pretty unique. Not a lot of there's a lot of brands that come into combat sports that are here today, gone today, so to speak. But Rev Gear has been around for over 2 decades. It's got to be by now. Uh, what do you think is the key to be a consistent brand in combat sports?
I tell you what, and I spoke on this in terms of those sponsorships earlier, is that if you're still around in this game after a while, kudos, props, hats off to you because you're doing it right. You're doing something right. And again, on something that I alluded to earlier, was that you're taking care of people the right way. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the one thing that Rev Gear has always done, especially for me, is they've always taken care of me. Like if I ever needed anything, they always took care of me. They always answer my calls. They're always there for me, and they really do good business, and they have a good product. Like how can you? It doesn't get better than that. Like if you have a good product, good people, and you're doing good business, you can be around. And that's the one thing that Rev Gear has done is they've checked all those boxes where a lot of companies failed in one or many of those areas. But Revgear has always been on top of it. I just saw a picture just a couple days ago. A friend of mine randomly sent me a picture from like it was over a decade ago, and I'm in a Revgear shirt. I go, oh man, I'm saying they don't even make those no more. They don't
Right.
even make that kind no more. But I'm always in Revgear stuff now. I'm always in like the Revgear sleeveless hoodies because I started working out a little bit. So like I gotta
Okay. Get you swole on.
yeah. It's cold. It's cold, but I still gotta show everybody the shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They gotta see the shoulder. They gotta see the work.
Do they make geese?
They do make gis.
Okay. Okay. Have you tried them out? I'm in the market for a new gi.
I've never tried their gis, but I got a gang of their t-shirts and their equipment is always good, man. I use their equipment a lot. In fact, their pads, the focus mitts, the pads, the boxing gloves, I use all their stuff all the time, man. And they sent me the little sticks to help my wrist because like when I hold the pad, it
Mm-hmm.
kills me. So the little sticks are just tremendous, man. I love working with the sticks. I mean, just really good quality stuff, man.
That's something no one ever talks about is the punishment that pad holders take. Like poor coaches, man. The
Oh,
wrists just take such a pounding. It's really we don't talk about it enough. Like you're literally putting your body on the line for someone else. Like so someone else can be prepared and be ready. It's kind of a thankless job, honestly.
yeah, I mean, it's not only thankless, but when you hear some of the fighters go up to coaches like, "Yo, let me get some pad work," and I'm like, "Dude, you're just asking to put this man through torture,
Mm-hmm.
and you expect him to do it." And then when coaches are like, "Nah, man, I'm not doing pads today," and fighters get upset, I'm like, "Man, have have a heart, have
Yeah.
some sympathy, some empathy for this man. This man is getting beaten up doing pads for you, and you're punching his body,
Mm-hmm.
whacking back out of alignment." So
It's a
it's
cultural thing too,
yeah,
right? Like if when I was going to this boxing gym many moons ago, and you have to be selected. Like you don't just get pad work. Like no, you go hit the
right.
heavy bag, you jump rope, speed bag, double ended bag. You got all these different things you should be doing before you even start thinking about getting a round of pads in. Like that's for you got fight coming up. That's different. But if you're just in there, they usually reserve the train and Muay Thai very similar. Like unless your pad holder is your training partner, like getting actual pad rounds in, Like that's an a privilege. That's a
Yeah,
privilege.
it's weird. You're right, because it is kind of, it's certainly a privilege. It should be a privilege. I don't think a lot of people really respect it or see that perspective as it being a privilege anymore. It's almost, for some fighters, a what they assume for them to be, I'm your fighter. You're
Yeah,
supposed to do this for me.
it's an entitlement. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're like, wait a minute. Thanks, but no thanks.
Uh, dude, I was talking to Matt Sarah the other day, and he had the nicest things to say about you, by the way. Like
Oh,
total G. But I gotta know, like when you're ever just hanging out, you ever rub that split decision in his face?
do I ever? I got it tattooed on my body, on my arm. It says, "Hey Matt, I won."
What a weird moment that was, right? Because they, for anyone that doesn't know, they read the wrong winner,
Yeah,
and they
they
had
read
they,
the, they read the wrong winner. The judge. I mean, everybody talks about judging today, man, but that was probably the first biggest mistake in judges' careers, where one of the judge scored it wrong. He scored Matt's scores where my name was, and vice versa, and they read it wrong and said Matt was the winner, and I was like, we was tripping. We was like, wait, oh my
right,
God,
right.
really? And then they came
Vegas.
back. Yeah. Then they came back 10 minutes later to the back. Dana White comes back 10 minutes later into the dressing room and is like, hey, you won that fight. And I was like, yeah, man, I thought I won too. He's like, no, no, you really won. They scored it wrong. They messed up the score and you really won the fight. I was like, yay, give me
Yeah,
my
because
money.
like that's a win bonus. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
that's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal, especially back then because we weren't really making a lot of money. And I mean, people think that the win bonuses are something now, man, but back then it really mattered because I mean
Mm.
that was a big chunk of my produce.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. And I was talking with Matt, and we both have victories by submission due to strikes on our record. And he was telling me how that was his favorite finish. It happened against GSP. Do you have a favorite finish that on your resume that's like one that just stands out as your like absolute number one?
No, none of them stand out as absolute number one, but there was always a feeling that I would get when I would submit somebody. There
Mm-hmm.
was always a very special feeling that I would get because I mean, you could knock somebody out or you can win a decision by beating them up, but there's something to be said about twisting them up in a position to where they have to give up, and they're tapping and they're saying, "Okay, man, you win." And they're acknowledging that you're better and they're acknowledging that you win, and there's a special feeling about that. And I've chased that feeling every fight and I chased it every training session. And now that I'm old and decrepit, I don't get a chance to do it anymore, but I chase it vicariously through other people. Just that sensation of making somebody submit. I love that. I love the
Mm-hmm.
feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, that armbar you hit on Jeremy Stevens was ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
Just so you know, between the two of us.
Apparently he claims he never tapped, but I was like, you was on your way to
Well,
breaking. He screamed, and that's a verbal tap.
yeah, that is a verbal tap, and they tell you that in the locker room.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a verbal submission, and I'm fine with that. Like, and
yeah.
of course he's gonna say he didn't tap. Like
Right.
technically maybe, but you verbally tapped, and that's kind of sweeter, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's the same thing, man. It's the same thing. It's the same
Yeah,
thing. And there's something about that. And if you've never felt that, if you're listening to this and you've never felt that, you're missing out on life.
yeah, no
One of life's
kidding.
greatest joys.
So you don't train anymore at all?
No, I don't train competitively. When I say train, it's more from a scientific study perspective.
Okay.
So I'll get down on the mat and I'll go through moves with people. I'll let them do the moves on me. I want to feel them, feel the pressure points, the balance, and all that good stuff, and just work through positions in that way. But I don't train and get on the mat and go, okay, 10-minute go, let's go. I don't do that.
Right, right.
I,
Okay.
I I can't do that with these young guys. I was telling Eve Edwards the other day, I said, dude, you got to stop training with your pros, man. It's killing you. And he said, I said, if you're going to train, at least do it with regular people. like
Mm-hmm.
with regular jobs. So pros will
Mm-hmm.
kill you. They got
Yeah,
too much energy.
yeah, and being the veteran, you're always going to have that target on your back. You know what I mean? They're always going to
Ooh, I
want to.
tapped out Dean Thomas.
Right,
I don't want
right.
that.
Yeah.
You had your chance.
It is what it is. So I guess we won't see Dean Thomas in a grappling match anytime soon.
No, probably not. I don't know, man. Like one day, I think that one day I'm gonna feel like I'm in good enough shape to where I can go. You know what? I think I'm gonna do a invitational grappling match.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be kind of cool one day. So who knows? I'm not throwing that out, but it has to be another old guy like myself or
Yeah.
somebody from a wheelchair. I'll do that.
I know they do have you seen that car jujitsu? They'll like put people in the
Oh
front
yeah.
seat of cars and just I don't know.
I'm in for that. You know what I'm saying? I'll do that one. I thought that
Yeah.
was funny. He was trying to tie my man up with the seatbelt. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, it is what it is. Combat sports, I always say it cannot exist. Like there's always the sports side, but there always needs to be the spectacle side also. It's
Yeah.
you gotta have both if you want eyeballs.
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. But to me, I think the people on the spectacle, I think everybody needs to just know their place, right? You got to know your place. Like if you are in it for the sport, know your place. Like know that if you are in it for the sport and you're not getting eyeballs, know that you're probably not gonna make a lot of money and be okay with that. You're doing it for the love. You have to realize that. And if you are Logan Paul, know that you're getting a lot of money and but know that you also not one of the best fighters in the world. Like be
Right.
okay with that, right? Be okay with that. Be okay with you the spectacle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And get your money, get your bag.
Yeah, get your
Yeah.
money.
It's prize fighting at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah,
prize
I'm
fighting.
okay with that.
Well, I'm not going to hold you up too much longer. One question: I feel like you've paid your dues and you have a real solid outlook on what the sport is, and you've seen it grow and you've seen it evolve. So, if you could change just one rule in MMA, what would it be?
Mm. In wow, that's a rule or part of MMA, like change something that
Whatever,
is
whatever is cooler. Whatever the cooler answer would be.
um if I had to change something, I would get rid of the 10-point must system.
Ooh. And what would you replace it with? Maybe more of like the Japanese, you judge the whole fight.
Probably I would do it that way. I mean, to make a simple answer very complicated, I would change the entire structure of how we select the winner of a fight
Hmm.
because I think that sucks. I think the way we select the winner sucks, and it goes hand in hand with a pay structure that I think is outdated in terms of win bonus. I think fighters should just get paid to fight, and you should
Mm-hmm.
get bonus to finish, not
Mm-hmm.
win, but to finish. Um, so I think those are some things that I would change. I would probably have more judges, like
Right.
7 judges, and a system where they were judging it that really told more of the story of the entire fight as opposed to round by round. So
Mm.
some things like that. I mean, it would be very complicated, but like I said, but that's just
Total a total overhaul of the
yes,
scoring system and judging.
total overhaul of the scoring system. And then after that, I would allow knees to the head on the ground.
God damn it. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dean Thomas. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. Because knees to the head. You're a jujitsu guy, right?
I love it all. I'm
Okay.
Muay Thai, boxing, kickboxing. I mean,
But
I suck at
but,
wrestling, but
but the lack of knees to the head is what contributed to the death of a good MMA guard,
mm,
right?
mm,
Because 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 guys could sit on their knees in a turtle position and not take punishment, like knees to the head. They didn't have to go to their guard so they can sit there. So that's the lack. So now we have a lack of good MMA guards. We still have guards, but good, sophisticated, educated guards. No one has really took the time to develop them because wrestling was so superior and you could just sit on your knees and you didn't have to go to your back. Like when you look at the
Well,
way
isn't
DJ Johnson,
isn't technically isn't Turtle a guard?
uh,
I
if you're
know
what's the
what you
one
mean.
guy
I know
name
what
was
you mean.
like if you look at Demetrius Johnson, the way he got knocked out was
Mm,
because
mm,
he didn't go to his guard. Like he was so used to just sitting on his knees and getting up,
mm-hmm.
and then but in that situation, he probably should have went to his guard. And I think that
Right.
that was what killed. I think that was one of the things that contributed to the death of a good MMA guard.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. Um, and even the whole playing the game thing, I hate that. Like that's embarrassing. Like if I'm watching fights with people who aren't necessarily combat sports fans and they start doing that, like, oh, one hand's down, the fingertips down, the palm is down,
Oh
can't knee me, can't knee, blast them with the knee.
yeah, just go, just knee a guy in the head. Like
Or like you
how is that
saw
any worse than on the feet?
exactly. And like the Peter Yan lost his title over this. You
Yeah,
know,
he lost
I
his
don't,
title over that. How is it any worse than than taking your elbow and being able to smash somebody in the face with it?
it's not.
Yeah,
It's
get rid of
not.
that rule.
Pride was awesome. Like the soccer kicks, the knees to the head. Like you sacrificed the elbows, but I mean, I don't
I'll
know.
take it. I'll
Pride had
take
a
it.
lot of things going on that were really great for sure.
Yeah, like steroids. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Yes,
just kidding. I'm just
steroids and the
playing.
referee earpiece and the
Yeah.
yakuza and you know.
No, but like things like the yellow card and all that stuff should be implemented. I would implement that too because like that would keep guys from trying to stall their way to victory.
Yeah, 100%. Oh man, and then you can if the ref is being foul, you pull out a yellow card on him like Rampage did.
Yeah.
All right, Dean, I'm gonna set you free and get you out of here. I feel like I've taken up way too much of your time. Apologies for that. But before we go, how can people follow you on your journey? What are your social media handles, YouTubes or Instagram, Facebook? How can people follow you?
Everything is under at Dean Thomas. Dean is spelled Din Thomas. Now, right now, all my stuff is down because
Mm,
I'm taking a little hiatus because I'm focusing on some things in life. But
mm.
don't let that fool you. You can still find me on at Dean Thomas. So I'll still be around. So still check me out. Still look for me. I'm going to be around. I ain't going nowhere. And other than that, you can see me on the UFC broadcast, ESPN broadcast, and hear me on Sirius XM radio.
Awesome. Well, Dean Thomas, thank you so much for taking out the time to speak with me. And thank you for all your contributions to combat sports, both inside and outside of the cage. I wish you nothing but continued success.
Thank you, man. Thank you for your time, man. Thank you for having me, and much love. We can always do this again.